Shabbat Shalom, Mishpacha. Okay, so today's reading is going to be from the Pasha, the Torah portion, which is Pasha 5, RSAHK Sarah, and this is in the book of Genesis, chapters 23, verse 1, where it starts. Now, I want to read out a little bit to you so you can get a little understanding of where we are going with this, and I'm going to show you a mystical twist to this particular portion of the Torah reading. So here it says in verse 1 of chapter 23, Sarah lived 127 years. These were the years of the life of Sarah. Okay, this is very important. Now, the word there, at this point, the Hebrew word there, baka, which means to weep, is written in very small or in small script within the Hebrew. And the kuf is very small in that particular letter, baka, or in the wording, which means to weep. And that basically shows that Abraham was sad that his wife Sarah was overcome. And although we don't quite understand exactly here, because the Torah doesn't go into explanation how, but there is a story in some of our other books that talks about Satan coming down and deceiving Sarah. So the kuf here is for the deception and for the smiting. And Abraham was weeping for his wife Sarah. The lowering of the kuf indicates that everyone was sad for Abraham's loss. Why? What is this deception about? So our books write, and they say to the effect of, they say that the reason why Sarah died in grief, because if you remember, Abraham had taken Isaac, and he had taken Isaac for a burnt offering, but he didn't tell Sarah that he's taking her for a burnt offering. So as the story is told, that had he told the mother, how would she react if she realized that her son, which had taken, 25 years to acquire that child, would she allow such a thing? Would she even allow Abraham to, take him and sacrifice him in that particular manner? There's probably consensus on that she wouldn't have allowed it. She probably would have thought Abraham's gone mad. And although God has spoken to Abraham many times before, but it could be that she might question Abraham and say, no, you're making it up, and maybe it's your ego, maybe something else. So that is where this Satan's deception comes in, because our books tell us that Satan came down as a human being, spoke to Sarah, and then told her, do you know where Abraham took your son? And Sarah says no, because she thought he'd just taken him on a tour somewhere. When he turns around and tells her he's actually taken him to sacrifice him. And it is told that caused immense grief to Sarah, that her son has been taken to be killed, a boy that was acquired after 25 years of prayer and hard work. So this is why our books write that this may have been the reason for Sarah's demise, that she was in grief and was very upset that her son is going to be killed. However, Abraham, on the other hand, had faith that God is not going to kill Isaac. Because in chapter 22, the previous chapter, this is where God tells Abraham, take now your son. Now I'm reading out of the Abrahamic-Faith Bible, the Hidden Truths of Braille Scrolls. And he said, take now your son, your beloved son, Yitzhak, whom you love, and go to And it tells him to take him to the land of Moriah, and offer there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains of which I shall tell you. So Abraham rose early in the morning, saddled his donkey, and took 2 of his young men with him. Now these 2 young men that went with Yitzhak, by the way, I have a footnote in the Bible which tells us that who these 2 young men are. One is Ishmael, one of his elder sons, and the other is his other son, who's called his servant, known as Eliezer. So they are both arguing while Abraham is walking in front. They are both arguing over who will get Abraham's inheritance after Isaac's death. So, interesting, isn't it? So these 2 are arguing who's going to get the inheritance because Isaac is going to be done away with. But Abraham knew, within himself he knew that if he thought that he had to sacrifice his son over there, he knew that God would raise him. So he was confident that God would raise him. However, even one inkling in Abraham's mind was that his son will not be killed. In other words, God will do something miraculous at the time, which we know happened. God provided a ram, so Abraham's son was not put to the sacrifice, but a ram was provided, so the ram was instead sacrificed. So Abraham's belief system, remember, your belief system is what comes into your life, mostly. Mostly what you believe is what is going to be. This is very important. Now, because we're going to tell you this with the next chapter. So Abraham here is now standing before the people of the land, and it says here, then Abraham stood up before his dead, spoke to the sons of Heth, saying, I'm a foreigner and sojourner among you. Give me property for a burial place among you, that I may bury my dead out of my sight. And the sons of Heth answered Abraham, saying to him, Hear us, my master. You are a prince of Elohim among us. Bury your dead in the choicest of our burial places. None of us will withhold from you his burial place, that you may bury your dead. Then Abraham stood up and bowed himself to the people of the land, to the sons of Heth, and he spoke with them, saying, If it is your wish that I bury my dead out of my sight, hear me, and meet with Ephron, the son of Zahar, for me, that he may give me the cave of Machpelah. Now, by the way, this cave of Machpelah, this is in Hebron. I actually went there, and there is the Abraham's, what you might call gravesite, and where all our patriarchs and matriarchs are buried. I had the privilege of standing in Israel in this place. It's a beautiful place. On one side, it's laced with Hebrew, and on the other side it's laced with Arabic, or a mixture of the two. And one side is controlled by Muslims in Hebron, and Muslims are allowed to enter from one side, and the other side, the Jews are allowed to enter, and any visitors that come from this side. So this way you can get into the what's traditionally believed to be the grave site of Abraham, Sarah, of course, and all our other matriarchs. Even believe that Adam was buried there as well. So Adam and Eve. So in this case, I have the privilege of actually stepping in that place and praying and visiting the grave of my forefather Abraham. I think that was a privilege and a pleasure. And my goodness, I would encourage you that if you ever get a chance to go to Israel, go to Israel and definitely visit this place. Visit it. It's a beautiful place to go and sit and pray. So here we are told that Abraham bowed himself down before the people. He spoke to Ephron in the hearing of the people of the land, saying, If you will give it, please hear me. I'll give you money for the field. Take it from me and I'll bury my dead there. Okay, let's look at this mystical side of this, because I think the mystical side is important, that we may understand what is it that we are being taught. Because remember, the Torah has many different types of understandings, readings, or I should call 70 faces of the Torah. So we're shown one face where Sarah died due to particular issues, which you're not told over here. For this, you're going to have to read Book of Yashar, which kind of goes into a little bit more detail. I do have one translated in Amazon that you can buy, and that has a lot of footnotes, a lot of corrections made, and it's called the Book of Yashar, the Book of the Upright. So if you ever want to get into more in-depth study of this, I'd encourage you to go get the Book of Yashar in Amazon, buy it, and then study it. It's got a lot of great information in it. So here, think about it. Let's turn this into a mystical way and look at Sarah and look at Abraham. Let's look at Abraham as a man. Any man out there, you, somebody else, it's okay. And let's look at Sarah as a desire, as an object that you desire in your life. There might be money, there might be car, there might be a house, there might be great health, any of these things. So let's assume that you desire to get something. And so imagine this whole story is weaved. And in this weaving of the story, Abraham wants a place for the burial of the dead. So what happens when you bury a seed in the ground? Think about it. When you bury a seed in the ground, what happens? It dies. And when it dies, only then can that seed produce more multiple seeds. In other words, it must die. So if you imagined Abraham to be a man and Sarah to be the desire, we're going to mystify, use it and look at it in a mystical way. And so if Sarah is a desire, so you want to bury, you want to put your seed, imagine Sarah being the seed, put in a cave or put in the ground, and when the seed is put in the ground, is dead, and then it will produce multifold for you. So this desire could be something that you wanted, could be a car, a house, money, health, etc. You bury it out of your sight. How do you bury it out of your sight? Also it says that, what does Abraham say here? I'm a foreigner and a sojourner among you. Give me property for a burial place among you that I may bury my dead. What is the dead here? The dead could be, the dead is in the mystical side, the dead is your desire. So you want to put your desire out of the sight. Out of my sight, in other words, out of your sight, out of everybody's sight, not just your sight, everybody's sight. So what does this teach us? This also teaches us when we have a desire, something that we wish to acquire, we should not go and advertise it to everybody. If you wanted to buy a car, sure, you can tell people that you want to tell, but I would say don't tell anybody at that point. Don't tell anybody about your car, what you desire. Keep it within yourself, bury it, bury it like as Abraham here buried the dead. You bury it out of sight. So your desire, you are desiring it, you bury it in your head, your skull, you bury it and you emphasize what car you want or the amount of money or the type of place you want to live. So once you bury it, and here notice that Abraham said, Abraham stood up and bowed himself to the people of the land, sons of Heth. Okay? Now remember, this place, Hebron, if you don't know, Hebron is a place, it's like a hilly area. It's like a mountain, small hills. So it's a hilly area. So in the hilly area, if you notice that a lot of people that are taught about Jesus of Nazareth, they're taught that, he was buried in a place called the skull. Now, it's interesting, isn't it? They use the term the skull. So notice that this is a hill area. So when we stand up, as a human being, what is the northmost part of our body? The northmost part of our body is always going to be the head. So that is a skull, okay? So you bury your desire in your skull. Here as Abraham is saying that I want to bury my dead, and if you allow me. And so they say, okay, sure, get the place from us and you can bury your dead. Abraham is willing to give money for the field and take it from them and bury his dead, and so that's what happens. And it says that Abraham weighed out the silver for Ephron, which he had named in the hearing of the sons of Heth, for 100 shekels of silver, currency of the merchants. So the field of Ephron, which was in Machpelah, which was before Mamre, the field and the cave which was in it, and all the etzim, all the trees that were in the field which were within all the surrounding borders were accounted for. Notice here that it says the field. Remember I told you, when you plant your seed, you plant it in the field. So you plant your seed, your desire, in the field. It must die. When it's dead, it will always produce. So how do you produce your desire? I mean, how is it going to produce? By just being buried? No, you can't just bury it and forget about it. You got to work it. So how do you work it? Well, you'll water it every day, isn't it? This is where imagination comes in, your affirmations comes in. If you don't do that, you won't succeed in seeing your desire. So here we see that it says that Abraham buried Sarah, his wife, in the cave of the field of Machpelah before Mamre. So the wife here, the analogy of the husband and the wife. Husband is Abraham, the conscious, and the wife is a subconscious. Okay, so this is the analogy. So here you take your desire, from your consciousness, from your conscious mind, and you bury it. You're going to bury it deep into your subconscious. If it gets into your subconscious, deep in your subconscious, then that desire will come to fruition. There's nothing that can stop that desire from coming to pass. This is the husband and the wife analogy. Why? Because conscious is male, subconscious is female, and it's in every human being, by the way. So, verse 20, so the field and the cave that is in it were deeded to Abraham by the sons of Heth as property for a burial place. Look, technically God gave us a life over here, so He deeded to us a field. What is that field? It's your subconscious mind. Well, you can bury your desires in there, you can plant your desires in there, and you can reap the rewards later. Now, if you listen to Earl Nightingale, and if you've ever read Earl Nightingale's little booklet, that it's actually on internet free, on an audio, it's about 20 minutes, and Earl Nightingale says something similar. He says similarly that if you have he says if you bury your seed in your mind, he says if you bury it, and he says doesn't matter whether you put poison in your field or you put good or evil. He says both will produce. So he says to make sure that you produce good. He says your field is capable of producing either. It can produce evil and it can produce good, and I believe that is 100% true. That yes, your field, it can produce either. So let me give you Earl Nightingale's take on this here. I think the little lecture that he made was called The Stranger's Secret. Listen to this.
And every person who discovered this for a while believed that he was the first one to work it out. We become what we think about. Now, it stands to reason that a person who's thinking about a concrete and worthwhile goal is going to reach it, because that's what he's thinking about. And we become what we think about. Conversely, the man who has no goal, who doesn't know where he's going, and whose thoughts must therefore be thoughts of confusion and anxiety and fear and worry, becomes what he thinks about. His life becomes one of frustration, fear, anxiety, and worry. And if he thinks about nothing, he becomes nothing. Now, how does it work? Why do we become what we think about? Well, I'll tell you how it works as far as we know. Now, to do this, I want to tell you about a situation that parallels the human mind. Suppose a farmer has some land, and it's good, fertile land. Now, the land gives the farmer a choice. He may plant in that land whatever he chooses. The land doesn't care. It's up to the farmer to make the decision. Now, remember, we're comparing the human mind with the land. Because the mind, like the land, doesn't care what you plant in it. It will return what you plant, but it doesn't care what you plant. Now, let's say that the farmer has two seeds in his hand. One is a seed of corn, the other is nightshade, a deadly poison. He digs two little holes in the earth, and he plants both seeds, one corn, the other nightshade. He covers up the holes, waters, and takes care of the land, and what will happen? Invariably, the land will return what is planted. As it's written in the Bible, as ye sow, so shall ye reap. Remember, the land doesn't care. It will return poison in just as wonderful abundance as it will corn. So up come the two plants, one corn, one poison. Now, the human mind is far more fertile, far more incredible and mysterious than the land, but it works the same way. It doesn't care what we plant. Success, failure. A concrete worthwhile goal, or confusion, misunderstanding, fear, anxiety, and so on. But what we plant, it will return to us. You see, the human mind is the last great unexplored continent on the earth. It contains riches beyond our wildest dreams. It will return anything.
Okay, so this is a stranger's secret. You want to listen to it. It's a very short lecture. It's not very long. It's about 22 minutes long. So I would encourage you to listen to it in your spare time. However, what I wanted to point out is the analogy of the seed that is planted in fertile ground. Whatever you plant, this is the male and the female aspect of the human body. Whatever you plant, so shall you reap. And this is where I was telling you that we are similarly told in Scripture. This story is weaved and could be looked at in a philosophical way as well. So, Abraham and his wife Sarah and the children thereof. Chapter 24 talks about Abraham being old, well advanced in years, and it says that the Lord had increased Abraham in all things. And Yudhe had increased Abraham in all things. So Abraham said to the elder servant of his Bait, who ruled over all that he had, please put your hand under my thigh and swear by Hashem's name, of course, the Elohim of Shemaim and the Elohim of the earth, that you will not take a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaani among whom I dwell. So that the whole rest of the story is weaved regarding Abraham's son Isaac. So in other words, why Isaac must have a correct wife in order for him to live the right life. Now notice that Abraham sends for his wife in his relatives. He doesn't pick up a wife from the land. Now there's a lot can be said about this, but essentially, if we are looking at it philosophically, if we're looking at it philosophically for yourself, and we are saying that Isaac is your desire. Let's say Sarah was the seed planted, and we've got the conscious and the subconscious, Abraham and Sarah. Then we've got the seed. The seed turns out to be, say, Isaac. Isaac is a pseudonym or a philosophical way to look at your desire. It's your desire. So it now talks about how to utilize that desire. See, Abraham sending his servant or his son Eliezer to find a wife is typical, meaning that once you get your desire, what do you do with it? What are you going to do with it now? In other words, let's say that you had a desire to have $100 million and you got your $100 million. Well, now what? Now what are you going to do with it? In other words, in order to deal with that desire that you received, now you must dispose of it or utilize it in the correct format in order to benefit from this desire. This is where basically the Torah is highlighting the need for the servant to go and to find the correct wife, the right wife, in order for Abraham's fruit, in this case Isaac, in order that Isaac be utilized in the correct way. So similarly, if we are looking at it philosophically, when you have a desire and you get your desire, make sure that before you even get your desire, you decide what you're going to do with it and how you're going to utilize it. So that it doesn't just, boom, like hit you on the head and you're like, oh, what the heck? I've suddenly had a lot of money or suddenly got the thing I desire, now what do I do with it? So they got everybody, every Tom, Dick and Harry chasing after you for a share. So this is why, first of all, it's very important to understand is to, first of all, make a decision on your desire. Remember, just as Earl Nightingale said, that if a farmer plants corn, or he plants nightshade into the field, both will come out. The field doesn't care. Similarly, our mind, if we plant evil thoughts or wrong thoughts, bad thoughts, then we'll produce the result being bad. But if we plant good things into our mind, then good things will come out. So the good that you want to come out, you have to decide. You have to make a decision. What do you want? What do you want in your life? So first of all, decide what you want. Don't worry about the timing. And it doesn't matter about what it is. I mean, what do you want? 10 million? 100 million? 500 million? What do you want? Businesses? What do you want? A nice car? Nice home? A nice spouse? What do you want? Decide that first. Great health? Once you decided on that, then start working on it. And the way you work it is just as we will go to a field when we plant something and we will water it every day. You have to do similarly. So you're going to write an affirmation around it, and then you're going to work on that affirmation, and you're going to speak it every day. And when you speak it every day, that's when you start to work it. When you start to work it, and whether you believe in it or not, the result will come out. So that is the whole point. In order to reap benefits in this life and reap the result from your life, a productive result, don't waste your life just dilly-dallying and running around this, that, and the other. Make a decision firmly of what you want. It could be more than one goal. It could be 5 goals. It could be 50 goals. It doesn't matter how many. So you start with 1, 2, 3 goals, 4 goals, 5 goals, or just the one goal. You work that one goal. You get your confidence. When that one goal comes into your life, then you can go on to the next. But remember, make the decision, make the choice, plant the desire, make sure that the seed dies in the ground, and then the seed can produce the result. So in order for the seed to die, in other words, that's when the result is going to be produced. So you're going to have to work it. You're going to have to dedicate some time to it. When you dedicate some time to it and you work it daily, then you're going to start to see the emergence of that goal, and you'll get it. But it will take whatever time it takes. We do not worry about the time, how much it takes, but we are concerned about what is the goal, because you can't be unclear about it. You've got to be very clear of what is your goal. If it's an amount of money, how much is it? Don't just say, oh, I want to be rich. Well, that's not good enough. What is rich? What might be rich in one person's category may not be another person's category. For one person, having $500,000 might be rich. And for another person, maybe having $100 million is rich. So everybody's definition of rich is different. First decide what your definition of rich is. And same way, if you wanted a car, first decide what car you want, what model, what make. And then you can leave the rest. I mean, it doesn't mean if it has a trim, doesn't have a trim, has alloys, doesn't have alloys, leather seats or not. Those things can be left out. But at least you got to have definitely the model and the make of the car before you can start working on the desire. So with that, I wanted to give you an idea that, Abraham's passage can equally be looked at in a philosophical way, and we can make sense of it that way as well. So if you want to look at it linearly, or if you want to look at it historically as a story that happened with Abraham and his family, like I said, if you want further information, by all means get the book of Yashar from Amazon, and you'll be able to get the full story, what happened there. With that, I'm going to say have a wonderful Sabbath and a wonderful week ahead. Shabbat Shalom to you all.